Hi, I'm Eric Johnson. I'm the Executive Vice President of Engineering at GitLab, and this is the fiscal year 21 Q4 How to Achieve Engineering Division OKRs meeting. So I think everybody's got the agenda up. It linked to a recording I did earlier this week, and I've got our OKRs issue linked as well in the agenda. So if we want to go ahead and start with questions, happy to answer anything. And my direct reports is here to speak to how things are happening sort of under the hood.
I think that for the quality, it was kind of tough to find something quicker than a SUS score. It's not so much like that I want you to change because I think we're changing it anyway. I think it's just intellectually interesting. Like, how are we going to measure that quickly? That seems like a super tough problem, and I'm just very interested in it. Could you give a bit more detail there?
Yeah, Christy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to repeat the question. I was listening, but I think I missed part of it. So you're asking, what is the change?
How are we going to get to like a more timely usability score? I get that we're now going to measure it on GitLab.com, which probably already helps because that's a newer version. Any other things?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the first thing that we're going to do. We think that's actually going to make a really meaningful difference. When I went and looked at the metrics for adoption for self-managed on recent versions, what we found was it's significantly lagging. Previously, we were splitting the participants 50-50 between SaaS and self-managed. So we think this is the most meaningful thing that we can do to reduce the lag. Something else that we're going to do that I don't think is related to lag, but I think it's going to be interesting for us to see is we also now can target free versus paid users and see what the difference is between those segments. And that's something we're really interested in and don't know what to expect, but really curious to see the outcome. The team's running the first modified SUS now. So we should have answers within the next probably week and a half, 2 weeks. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Christy, so if we're, just a question, if we're segmenting the data more, would we be able to do something like look at SUS per stage usage or something like that? Just thinking that like, if someone's, for whatever reason, whether they're a free customer or they're just early, if they're only using one stage, they're going to see a tremendous amount of stuff in the navigation and in the admin settings that doesn't apply to them. And they might be daunted by that versus someone that's using more of the application, more of that is meaningful to them.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually are limiting participants, at least for this first round, only to users who are actively using 2 or more stages. And that's one of the reasons why we might even refine that approach as we learn more. Maybe we actually want to target 3 or more, or maybe we want to focus in a different way, but we'll learn more as we start to see the results that come in.
Instead of limiting it, might we just make sure we've got statistical significance for both groups, like people using less than 2 stages and people using more? Because the usability for people using less than a stage, presumably for early users, that might be quite important. Thinking of like user onboarding and conversion and things like that. I wouldn't want to kind of segment those people out.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can't do it for this one just because it's already in process, but that's certainly something we can consider for the future.
Cool.
I see a goal of DB health. That's super cool. Is this like restoring a backup from object storage, or is this like from a secondary in another region or in the same region? What is this?
Yeah, so I can talk to that one. We have really part of this one is making sure that we're providing the right visibility to some work that's already happening, and that we keep an ongoing look at that. So right now we use an automated component to do multiple backups each day. And we also use an automated component to run a pipeline of restores to ensure that a backup that you can't restore is worthless, of course. And so we already have all of that automated. What we're going to do is make sure that we're reporting on that well, and that we watch the health of that. So we're going to report on a percentage of success for the restore pipeline, and then also report on the elapsed restore time. Because if we get to the point where it's taking us multiple hours to complete the restore, then obviously that's the kind of the long pole in our ability to, there's a lot more that will have to happen for any given restore. The database is just kind of the first or a critical part of that. So if it takes multiple hours, that's the shortest time frame we'll be able to achieve, and so we'll want to watch that and react to that if it starts to get too long.
Yeah, and then maybe we should have a secondary in another region to restore from that or stuff like that. Great.
Yeah, I mean that might play into like how we look to like horizontally shard and scale and everything in the future. Because one of the things that, not just from a performance standpoint, but we also like, let's take the worst case scenario where we need to do a restore. Well, we need to be sensitive to knowing like how long is that restore gonna take, and it's just another element that we put into like architecting the database in the future. It's like planning for that, the day that we don't want to have happen. We've got to be ready for that.
Yep, thanks. And I'm moving on to point number 5. I'm okay with not doing the Geo failover on staging since we discussed it earlier, but I do wonder what people are perceiving as a timeline for that.
Yeah, so actually we are still doing that. We just didn't highlight it as an OKR. So we've got a work group that started up, and a key thing for that work group is still the near-term failover for Geo. That basically we want to have that happen before the end of this calendar year, and so that is still being worked. It just isn't called out as a key result. And we'll follow up in our group conversation on that item, since it's kind of been following a thread in the past couple months.
Cool.
Maybe, Steve, we could create an artifact on our management issue board and subscribe Sid to it. And that way you and I are chatting about in our one-on-ones. And then when it's done, Sid will see the status, or it'll remind me to push it to him when we've got the result he's looking for.
Yep, that sounds like good. I'll take that.
Cool, thank you.
I'll just stay with the infrastructure team for a little bit. Git delete without extra costs. How are we going to do that? That sounds daunting. Maybe only do it for paid accounts or stuff like that. I wonder what people are thinking about.
Yeah, so the goal there is so Git delete cluster. The intent there is to roll Git delete cluster out, not all at once for all of Git delete, but to basically do that over a period of time. And so what we want to do is roll it out in a way that we're also that we're combining the addition of the cluster functionality with the completion of some of the cost efficiency work. And kind of one of the biggest areas there is, I think there's a large percentage of our Git delete spend that is in support of our free user base. And so and a lot of that, it has much lower demand from just lower demand on Git delete. And so that's where we're looking a lot at shifting from the SSD backend storage to the spinning disk storage. And so
Sure.
If we balance those savings with adding clusters, that's what we're looking at, and just having a net zero overall increase in spend.
It makes a ton of sense. Archive projects to object storage or even cold storage, and free unused projects on spinning disks instead of SSD. That makes a ton of sense. I don't think it should be free on spinning disks. I think it's free non-active projects. Like, we should prevent like a popular open source project or something like that from having a bad experience.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, those maybe not very active from a change standpoint, but really active from a request standpoint, read standpoint. We want to make sure that those are still performant. Well, that they're all performant, but yeah, but balance them that way.
Cool. The infrastructure department narrow MR rate is 3 out of 10. I don't think it's an OKR. Should that be an OKR to improve that?
I'll be honest, we haven't looked a ton at that. One of the things is that so much of our MR effort goes on in ops.gitlab.net, and we're still working to bring all of that data over into to be relevant to the MR rate metric. Because right now, I mean, this is purely just what is going into product feature work, which is an important thing for us to look at. But then we're just not including any of that other, the MR activity that is primarily what the infrastructure team is working in within the ops.gitlab.
Yeah, I think as long as it's public, it's fine. So maybe an incentive to open up more repos.
Yeah. And there's an effort going on right now with the data team to do that. So we should have that in this next quarter.
Cool. Thanks. Oh, Eric, I said maybe we should. I think you said that we don't have someone assigned yet for the 5-minute production app. I'm sure this is the audience. Should we discuss that in this meeting?
Yeah, Christopher, do you want to kind of refresh what you said earlier in the key review meeting in terms of the status and what we're doing next?
Yeah, so far we've advertised for 2 weeks in weekend review, and we've did general solicitation out to staff and EMs, double checking to make sure all EMs have talked to all teams, and then also reaching out to individual staff members to make sure that they're not interested as well, because I think that's a good opportunity for them to have some exposure. Currently, everybody we've talked to has declined because they're enjoying where they're working in the product. So we probably have another few days of reaching out to a few additional folks because we haven't covered everybody, making sure that we've gotten full coverage. Not sure what we do after that. Sid made the joke we assigned somebody.
Well, press someone into service. We'll call it what it is. We do have to work with product on that because we're, in a small way, one person's worth, we're changing their roadmap depending on where we draw from. So it's at that point, it's sort of a product call. Where do they want to draw one person down from?
And if anybody's listening to this review who's an IC in development and is interested, please get in touch with me.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a unique opportunity to define the future of GitLab. So maybe I've done a bad job of promoting it. I'll start playing the music a bit more often. Is that also like whoever we find that wants to do this is allowed to do it?
I think we need to just double check that there isn't like something mission critical that they're working on that has a tight delivery, but my anticipation is that we work to accommodate whoever's requesting in every way possible. So that's maybe a longer way of saying yes, qualified yes.
Cool, thanks.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, I think we can go ahead and end early.
Great OKRs. Thanks, everyone.